So they send you little scissors and they give you like. All
right, hey everybody. Welcome to Sci-Fi Westerns. I see a lot of new faces out there, so I hope you guys enjoy our presentation. First things first, there's a very special someone out there in the audience who has a very special birthday today. John, will you please stand up? The real John Fitch, please stand up. Please stand up. John Fitch is now no longer a baby. He's a man now. We're all
He's now a toddler.
and we're all very proud of him for making it another year here on this earth, John. All right. In terms of things that are actually related to STARv, we have a fridge full of cold sodas for you all. Sci-fi cold sodas, and they are sci-fi because I deem them so. We have Peacemaker Pepsi, Dr. Simon Dr. Pepper, and Serenity Sprite. So go ahead and grab some of those to quench your thirst because we do not have sarsaparilla because I think that's alcoholic and we can't serve that without filling out like a million forms.
But we can serve it.
But we can serve it, but I don't want to have to do with the paperwork.
Many sections of the
that I don't want to do, so you all have to suffer for it. In terms of supporting the club with more directly, you're more than welcome to buy a membership. It helps us out a lot. It gets you a lot of perks and stuff in the club. So if you're new and you like what we're doing, grab a membership. It's only $6. You can talk to Claire, who is right there, about it, and you can pay with cash or card. We also have some T-shirts. Is anyone wearing their Star T-shirt today? All right. We have Derek. Will both of you please stand up and show the world that's not helping at all, Derek. These are designer Star T-shirts. They're guaranteed to accentuate your best features. And by that, I mean they accentuate all your features because, in my opinion, they're all the best. So yeah, they're pretty good. They're good quality. They feel nice, and they're only $10. We're also selling tickets to the Lego Batman movie, which we will be seeing next Friday.
Next Friday.
Yeah, next Friday. We're all going to go see that, and you can buy your tickets here with us. Right now, they're $11, and I believe that's $1 cheaper than it is in Fandango. And we're taking cash and card for those. You can talk to Claire to get your tickets to that as well. Don't forget to check out the STAR on social media. We have Facebook, we have Twitter. We also have the link, which is RIT's social media thing. If anyone here uses that, then good for you, I guess. Do you really?
How does it work?
I have no idea, but I post to it. STARfest is our sci-fi convention that we run every year. That is on April 15th. If you want to help us make that a reality, we have meetings every Saturday from 4 to 6 in Gleason 2149. And if you want to keep up to date on the progress of that, we have both Google+, Facebook, Tumblr, and Twitter accounts for all of those things that are posted regularly to things related to STARfest, sci-fi in general, and just other odds and ends that you might like to know. We also have PR meetings every Tuesday from 7 to 9 in SAU 1000. That is approximately directly below us right now. Book club, if you're interested in that, we are rescheduling the time at which it takes place. So if you don't go because it's not convenient for you, there's a when to meet on the book club Slack. So go to that and fill it out so that we can make sure that we can accommodate you better. STAR is hosting or working with quite a few events this month. We have Chocolate on Ice, which is this Friday from 10 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the Gene Policini Center. We'll have a booth set up there, so come check us out and get some chocolate. We are going to be selling our popular Sci-Fi Valentines from February 8th to 14th. We'll be starting sales at about 10 a.m., and that's in the SAU atrium area. Yeah, we're going to have a table set up. You can pick those up. There's puns involved. There's nerdy references involved. It's a great time. And finally, we're going to be having a hot drinks fundraiser somewhere near the end of April. And the current plan is that those hot drinks are free and we're accepting donations.
Yep. The plan is we are giving away free hot drinks for all of you to be less sad in the cold when you go to classes. And in return, we hope you find it in your warm hearts to donate to COPD Foundation, who we are raising funds for this semester.
Yes, and we're also accepting donations to COPD here at this mission.
Yes, you can just put them in the little blue box in the front.
Yep.
You can read a little thing about Leonard Nimoy and why we picked it.
And all of those go directly to COPD. We don't take anything from that blue box. So by all means, please donate. It's a lovely cause. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Taylor for second lectures. Or maybe there is more to. Oh, yes. Yes, library.
So library. You can see we have a library up here this week. We have these 2 boxes full of all kinds of science fiction books that you might want to read. If you want to check out one of these books, come and talk to me before or after admission. I have an online form that I will show to you and you can fill it out. And also,
Now this is pod racing.
we also have one more copy of the book club is doing. So if anyone needs that, it's right here. And questions?
My question is, if I have sci-fi books that I am no longer reading and I want to donate them to STARv, is there a process for that?
Talk to me, give it to me. I'll put it on the list and enter it into our catalog.
Okay.
So the process for most things, if you want to check out a book, talk to me. If you want to check in a book, talk to me. If you don't check in a book after like a month, I'll bother you. And that's pretty much it.
All right.
Has any questions about how that works?
Library questions?
If you have spare sci-fi books, can we donate them?
Yes. Yes, just talk to me about it and I will take your spare sci-fi books.
Clean up.
Appreciate
What if
it.
we have books that aren't sci-fi, but we really want to get rid of them?
We
I can't help you.
Regular library, man. Regular library.
Donate science fact books.
We've got a couple science fact books in
If
here.
you really want to.
The thing spoiler?
We've got Carl Sagan's Cosmos is more science fact than science fiction, I believe. There's a couple in here. So technically, yes.
One of them beeps and it's scary. There's
One
a
of them
Marvel.
does beep.
There's a Marvel one in there that when I was moving started beeping at me and I didn't know and I got really scared.
If you want the Marvel one that beeps, it's this one. It beeps.
Make it beep. No, don't make it beep.
I don't know how to make it beep.
The back and the rod are not inside the books.
I can guarantee you that there's probably only one.
Yeah, be very cautious with your copy of the Andromeda strain. It said free sample inside if you don't know a sample of what.
Yeah, okay. So any other questions?
All right, great. All right, let's get into the mission.
Yay! Welcome everyone. So today we're going to talk about Westerns and sci-fi and what Westerns have done for sci-fi and what sci-fi has done with Westerns and lots of good stuff like that. We're going to start off with, ooh, that's not how I do that. We're going to start off with spoiler warning because I know a lot of you have asked. I'm going to step out of the way of it for a moment. Yes?
Is the Westworld episode 1 spoiler 2 towards the end?
Okay, so all of the Westworld conversation will be at the very end of the meeting.
Okay.
So if you're trying to avoid it, it'll be at the very end of the meeting. Everything I have to say about Westworld will only spoil the first episode. If there's conversation about Westworld that happens after that, there may be additional spoilers, but my content only for the first episode. And all of the Westworld is going to be at the end. Even the slide that is miscellaneous is before the slide with Westworld. We're going to talk about Westworld at the end. As for everything else, very basic. Anything I talk about in here may have spoilers, but it's all pretty basic stuff. Yeah.
For those that don't know, Westworld episode 1 is written so you know nothing. So
Yes.
if you do actually hear about spoilers, try not to listen there or.
Yes, I will say that what I mean by I'll be doing spoilers for episode 1 is that I'm going to talk about the main premise, which is what episode 1 of Westworld is. But if you go into that episode knowing the premise, you will have a very different experience than you would if you didn't. I knew the premise before I watched Westworld. I saw episode 1. I still think that the whole series is great. But I do know that people have seen it without having any idea what happens in the first episode, not knowing what the series is about at all. And they said that they are glad that they did not know ahead of time. So I'll leave that to you. Starla's one of those people. Yeah. Okay. So that's the plan for spoilers. For those of you making comments in the audience, please be aware of spoilers as well. Also, I want to do our routine IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations, just to remind everybody to be courteous towards one another, their point of view, their background, while discussing this mission. Because there's a little bit of commentary on how these two genres handle socio-political stuff, as well as the fact that Westerns, when they were really popular, were being made in a time that does not necessarily have the same values as we do now, and I'll talk about that a little bit when we get into it, but that's something to keep in mind. Any questions about any of this? Okay. The one other disclaimer is that I am not a fan of Westerns. Sorry for Marioing you all on that. I want you to know that I'm coming from this on the basis of film study and genre study, and I've done a fair amount of research, but I know that somebody who really likes Westerns, really familiar with the genre, will almost definitely have more to say than I will. So if you are that person in the audience, raise your hand if you think you're that person.
Which person?
The person who knows and likes Westerns and may have more to say about it than I do.
favorite poster of John Wayne every night.
Okay, close enough. Very.
Asking that
I did. And was that person maybe because of my dad? But
So please feel free to comment. Let me know if you disagree with anything I have to say. Also, all of you as sci-fi fans may have encountered more of these mashups and genre crossings than I have, so please feel free to speak up about that as well. There will be a chance to just talk about anything you can think of that is sci-fi and Western. There will be a chance for that, so those of you who've got video games in mind that I've never heard of, hold on tight. Okay. All right, so since we're coming at this from a bit of genre theory, I would like to talk about what genre is. So genre is the way that we characterize certain categories of film, novels, media. You know when you think of a horror film, what you're looking for. You know when you think of a sci-fi film, what you're looking for, or Western film. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything in that genre is exactly the same, but it does mean that there are certain conventions that they follow. These conventions may be things like certain character archetypes. They may be certain actors or directors. John Wayne was mentioned, Clint Eastwood. These are really famous Western actors. John Ford, I believe, director of many Westerns. Cinematography, I think the best example of this is probably horror. You know what horror lighting looks like. You know exactly when you see somebody in the foreground and there's nothing in the background, something's gonna come into the background, something's gonna step into the doorway, something's gonna go into the mirror in the reflection. You know it's gonna happen. And if it doesn't, then that's the genre being subverted. Also, things like setting, very important for Western. Also, kind of important for sci-fi. So those kinds of things are ways that we can identify different genres. Now, genres exist to really manage audience expectation. One of those reasons is marketing. If you know that you like the ones with the aliens and the big spaceships that go pew pew, and you see one that goes pew pew, Cameron, he likes those. If you see that a movie has pew pew, you're going to say, oh, that's science fiction. I will probably like it because I have liked science fiction in the past. It's also used to subvert expectations. One of the ways we do that is mixing genres, or doing something new to surprise the audience. All of that is, you couldn't surprise the audience by having aliens in the American West, know that there weren't supposed to be aliens in the American West. And of course, genres are always being redefined. There are redefining films in every genre. In Westerns, I would say that one of those examples is the advent of the spaghetti Westerns, which we'll talk about a little bit. You may also think of something like The Dark Knight, completely changing the superhero genre, or if you're going to go even more specifically on the superhero genre, there had never really been anything like The Winter Soldier made before. Everything in the superhero genre had kind of followed this very formulaic, here's his backstory, here's his villain, go. And after that, we kind of were like, oh, these superhero films can also be cross-genre, can also be a little bit deeper than their base. So that's genre. So let's talk about sci-fi sci-fi real quick, actually. So what do you think? What are the settings for sci-fi? Space.
The future.
The future. Yeah.
Planet.
Yeah.
Mysterious weapon.
Alien, here in the future.
Helios, 20 feet.
What are some characters, character archetypes that you associate with sci-fi?
The military.
Mm-hmm.
Sassy robot sidekick.
Yeah.
See you, space cowboy.
Yep. I've got that in here. Don't worry. Yes.
Funny alien doesn't understand Earth culture.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about some themes, like some lessons that you might find in sci-fi a lot.
Concepts of what it means to be human.
Yep. Humanity is a good one.
Just because we came doesn't mean we should.
Yes. Technology. Yes.
The aliens that you think are hostile might not be hostile, and the aliens that you think are hostile might be hostile.
Yep. Good point. So we are going to dive a little bit deeper into this for the Western genre. What are we doing here? Okay, so what makes a Western? Westerns tend to follow these kinds of genre conventions very closely. The setting, usually in the American West, it might be a prairie, it might be the mountains, it might be a small town, it might be a desert. It's going to be probably in the American West. It's also probably going to be in the later bit of the 19th century. We're talking right around during and after the Civil War. Not all of them take place in this time span, but that's the one that is most common. We see a lot of wide open spaces. We see a lot of scenery, and we see nature as this thing that is wide and unexplored and beautiful and dangerous. And that sets the stage. In terms of cinematography, we're really used to the stereotype of the extreme close-ups in the gun battles. This came out of I believe the spaghetti westerns that came a little later. And we're used to seeing these wide open spaces where you can imagine there being a horse and a guy right over here, and he'd be tiny compared to these mountains. Also, these specific mountains, I believe, are in just an epic crap load of westerns because John Ford really liked them. So he just filmed there all the time. And why wouldn't you? That's what a western looks like. John. The characters that make the western. You've got the lone cowboy with a mysterious past that he's trying to get away from. Maybe he's a stranger that comes to town, or maybe he's the sheriff of the city. He's the lawman. He could be somebody who's fighting against authority, or somebody who signifies authority, but he's always going to be that one rough cowboy. A lot of them have the damsel, usually like a school teacher type, or just a kind of pretty woman that's there to work with the hero. You've got the outlaw. Sometimes the outlaw is the hero too. That's what anti-heroes are. You also, in a lot of westerns, have the Indians. I'm going to take a moment here to talk about how westerns are, as a genre, quite old, and that means that the values of the time were very different, and in my personal opinion, not very good. So portrayals of Native Americans were not necessarily good. They were very often inaccurate, sometimes offensive. That's not to say that they were all negative. They very often just weren't very good. Though I will say that they played an important role many times in the stories, if not as the antagonists, sometimes as a helpful character, but also they tended to be there to show cultural divide or to offer some kind of skill that the protagonist might not have. And in science fiction as well, but we'll get to that later. So keep in mind, cultural sensitivity is not necessarily the strong point of the Western. Other elements, they're very violent. There's a lot of guns. There's shoot 'em ups. It's good. It's fun. Things go bang. Things explode. Also, horses. Horses are a man's best friend. It's great. They ride them. They kill them, unfortunately, because, again, Westerns are violent. The saloon is there all the time. Many times the saloon may also be a brothel. The prostitute is one of the characters that we see a lot in Westerns. And they've got these recurring themes. Now, individual Westerns have their own themes too, but these recurring ones we see are the black and white struggle between good and bad, or the nature of being a hero or being an anti-hero later on is a more popular storyline and theme. Restraint, the balance between man and nature, the balance between civilization and, outlaw country, the pioneering West, and the danger of the unknown, where they've gone where nobody had been before that they knew of. So there's all of those recurring themes are what make a Western. Does anybody can anybody think of any other things that really personify Westerns to them? Yes, absolutely.
Manifest Destiny.
Yes, expansionism, manifest destiny, a lot of that. Yeah.
A lot of start with Zemo, that would hear your comedies in town, so he's the outsider.
Yep. Stranger comes to town. Yep.
All very a lot more focus on very grandiose score and very little dialogue and images when you tell a story rather than just talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Big ol' hats.
That's the important part. Yeah.
The hero is ridiculously good at shooting things.
The hero is ridiculously good at a lot of things most of the time.
The forced Mexican standoffs.
Yes, that is a very tried and true trope. Oof.
Just real quick, if you want to cure yourself with suspense, watch the Mexican standoff from The Good, Bad, and Ugly. It's at the end.
All right.
It goes on for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's long.
They're staring at each other.
Cameron.
Like breaches of honor, and the only way to get them back is in like a.
Yes.
It's almost a little bit medieval.
Yep. I'm gonna take a couple more. Yep.
Poker game turning into a shootout.
Oh yeah. The gambler is another common character trope in Westerns. Yeah. Yes, traditional gender roles. Again, Westerns, not the most sensitive or progressive of genres. They have very traditional gender roles. Sometimes you see positive women characters, but not as often as you would like. John, and then we'll finish up.
I was going to bring up True Grit's case somewhat intentionally subverting the gender.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. And subverting genre is what makes many great films great. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about history, about where these came from. So these genres did not actually start to become defined in film with Hollywood. They started to be defined in literary form. Dime novels were how Westerns originally got their start. These stories about these heroes, like Davy Crockett, were in the form of very small novels. We're talking like 30 or 40 pages, made out of very cheap paper that has not survived the standard time in most cases. This is around the late early 1900s. They were eventually replaced with pulp magazines, which is where we see sci-fi getting into the mix as well. They're all very easy ways to distribute short stories to the masses for very cheap. We see not only both of these genres really coming into form in these mediums, but also we see the beginning of Westerns influencing sci-fi before we even get to the silver screen, before we even make it to film. Some popular sci-fi pulp are amazing or astounding. They lead into the golden age of sci-fi you may know of, when Asimov was popular. This is where we lay a lot of the basis for both of these genres. Okay. Another thing that you can compare and contrast really well between sci-fi and Western is social commentary and political commentary. The thing to remember about genre and about media as a whole is that it is the product of its time. It's the product of where and when it was created, and many times takes the opportunity to take a stand on what's going on in that time. One thing that Westerns and sci-fi have in common is that they've been criticized for being escapist. They've been criticized for being immature. And I think that we all know that sci-fi is not always like that, and Westerns aren't always like that either. They very often take a chance to take a stand. We know that sci-fi, which really grew into popularity in Hollywood, did so around the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. So we see themes like civil rights, we see themes like environmentalism. And now, more recently, we see with Black Mirror, socio-political commentary about technology and humanity and what may happen in the near future if we continue on the way we are. Westerns also have commentary on their time. They comment on the Great Depression by glorifying these American ideals of the time of hard work and perseverance. They also began to follow in with the Red Scare and McCarthyism. A good example is the movie High Noon. If any of you were going to make the joke, okay.
We already did, it's okay.
Yeah, we all did internally. We've
Good.
killed it already.
Good. Which was about, to very, very condensingly summarize it, was about a sheriff on his last day, and there is a danger coming to town, an outlaw who was coming to kill him, and he had the choice between leaving with his beautiful new wife and not having to deal with it at all, staying to fight, standing his ground, and when he asks his community for help, they're like, no, why would we do that? And it kind of signals it's kind of commentary on the lack of unity in America at the time. Did you have a comment on that?
That sounds a lot like one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's last movies.
Which one?
I forgot what it is, but it's something about stopping a bunch of criminals who are passing through his town, which is the last town before Mexico. It's like a day or two before his retirement. And
It always is.
Yeah, no, I don't remember what it is.
The Last Stand.
The Last Stand.
Last Stand. And would you call that a Western?
Somewhat.
Or is it just an Arnold Schwarzenegger film?
It's really weird because like it definitely has Western elements to it. You definitely have the hat.
Well, that's all you need. I mean, all that genre stuff we talked about unnecessary. All you need is the hat.
And there's definitely a Mexican standoff in there.
Good. Another interesting thing about Westerns is because unlike sci-fi, they've kind of fallen out of favor of our current mainstream pop culture, which means that when you see them, they're either epic reimaginings of old films, or they're spoofs, or they're purposefully there to lay a backdrop of these traditional values that Westerns originally held in order to create a kind of contrast for a more contemporary social or political message like Brokeback Mountain, which was from 2011, I think, which I'm all sure you've heard of. The conflict about sexuality, if it had been in an older Western, probably would have been perceived very differently than it was when it came out. Yeah?
I was just in 2005.
2005. I thought it was older. You're right.
Wait, so do you consider modern Westerns to fall into Westerns as well?
What do you mean by that?
Like Hateful Eight, and Magnificent Seven. They're definitely set in the same time, but they had one of them is very different in its narrative on being related to a Western movie,
Mhm.
and the other one is just a really huge amalgamation of all the Western tropes you can ever think of.
Mhm.
Like,
I think that genre is really broad. I think that you don't need to have everything from the genre to be in the genre. I don't think that you need to be made at the time when Westerns were popular to be a Western. I don't think you need to not be a sci-fi to be a Western. If you can call Firefly a Western, which I think you definitely can, I think you can call modern Westerns Westerns as well.
And if you want to really touch on Magnificent Seven, that's kind of a weird one to talk about because being a remake of a Western, which was itself a remake of the Japanese film.
Is a remake of Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, which drew heavily on Western tropes, but in a different genre. Which also makes Star Wars an interesting case because there's a lot of Star Wars that is drawn off of samurai movies. So that might be an explanation for some of the Western influences in Star Wars as well. Yeah.
Would samurai be a form of Western?
I honestly don't believe I have the background to make that call, but I think that Westerns definitely did influence that genre. I think it's probably up to the viewer and the creator to say. I am neither. Anything else about the commentary? We got here some whale saving.
Yeah, more about that, please.
Yeah, more on that in a few weeks. Yeah. Okay. We often see with both sci-fi and with Westerns commentary about things like war, commentary about things like the intermingling of culture, which are really overarching issues in life, no matter when or where you are. So sometimes you see really similar things. Can anybody think of any other, those of you who are more familiar with Westerns, can you think of any other really good socio-political stands that are taken in Westerns, either explicitly or subtextually?
The only Western that I know is the one with the little like gecko guy.
Okay.
Rango. And it's that the whole 40 water thing to try to develop animal community.
Mm-hmm. So that sounds like one of those themes that is about the environment and finding balance with it. That is common.
Not exactly. The subversion is that it wasn't the human being, it's actually the capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get eaten by the snake and you eat them. So.
I have never seen that movie. Is it good?
No. A snake that is a cheetah instead of a crocodile.
Okay, that sounds badass. I don't know why you guys are like. Mm-mm.
It's only in it for like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay. 10 minutes of machine gun rattlesnake is still good though.
Also, it's got Johnny Depp.
Well, Johnny Depp was in another one too.
Johnny Depp, yeah. Questionable remakes, yeah. Cooper.
I know.
Do you mind speaking up a little bit?
I know this has been touched on, but a lot of Westerns are very much always have a theme of like anti-establishment, like we don't want this government up in here on our town trying to show us what we do. This is the West, this is outlaw town.
Mhm.
A lot of it, like, it seems like in like Brendan mentioned, like the Death of the West, like some of us on that. The government's trying to like organize and like tone down all the savagery basically, and like the outlaws and the sheriffs like, nah, I don't want this to happen. So.
Well, I mean that's a political issue that we see a lot. Less now that we've got,
It's basically like the old form of conservatism versus liberalism.
yeah, and decentralization versus centralization. Because, the United States is a very big place, and when the government was on the East Coast and Westerns were in the West, who was there to tell them what to do? The law still existed, but they really could make their own law, which is where a lot of those conflicts come into being. Is the main character anti-establishment, or is he, the keeper of the law? It's hard to say. Yeah. Okay. We move on. Okay, we're gonna talk some examples because examples are fun. So I am pretty sure that anybody who hasn't seen Westworld is here for this one. So let's talk about Firefly, because Firefly is fun. Firefly just is a Western. Like, I don't know how to explain it better than that. It's got so many of the same elements. It's in many of these planets are deserts or plains, not all of them, but many of them are. You very often find the main characters in these settings, sometimes lost in the middle of nowhere with these settings. The spaceship is vaguely shaped like a horse. It happens right after a war of unification, not so different from well, I mean, there are lots of different causes of the Civil War, but not so different necessarily. We see this main character who has a complicated and dark past, who is an anti-hero, who struggles with morality. It's about a small, close-knit community, the way you might find in an outpost town. It's about the dangers of the black. It's about, I meant space. Sorry, I didn't mean to be unclear. It's, yes, well, that's how they refer to it in Firefly. The dangers of the unknown within space, the dangers of authority when it's not immediately there and then it shows up. Also, kind of a good versus evil fight. Kind of a are you supposed to follow your leader? Are you supposed to follow your own morality? There are very, very tried and true Western tropes within it. The train job. There's trains in Westerns a lot of the time. There's fighting on top of trains. There's traveling with trains. Sometimes there's through time with trains. We'll get there. And also, Heart of Gold takes place in a brothel. You've got the prostitutes with the Heart of Gold there, which is, again, one of those characters. What else do you guys love about Firefly? It's just a good show. It was what? Was that you, Mario?
Yes, it was. It was him.
Was it?
What?
He said nothing.
Oh. Who said that their favorite thing about Firefly was that it was canceled?
That was me. That was clever.
It's really interesting how committed it is to being a part of the Western genre. And even in taking some of those themes like mixing of culture between the border planets and the Alliance. And also you get to see a really interesting mix of culture just with the way that they've made mankind this amalgamation of Western and Eastern cultures too. Yeah.
It feels really authentic, and at least to a degree, when last year at StarFest, when Nathan Fillion called in for a video conference, and he was talking about Firefly with us, he said that like one of his favorite scenes just from that show and from like his acting career was when he was sitting around a table with the rest of the cast, and they're just like, eating steak. And, he said that, he was still acting and he was still, in the character, but it felt just a lot like just a real family just sitting around a dinner table eating steaks for dinner and having a good time.
Mm-hmm. It also, just in the way that the show is composed, does a lot of Western things. The color grading on it makes it orange the way you may be used to from Westerns. The sets are magnificently created so that everything is a little bit worn the way it might be if you were a pioneer by the borders the way that they were. There's just really great influences. Not to mention the music. Fireflies. Does anybody want to say anything else about Firefly?
It's perfect.
It's great in every way. I
believe I'll go in.
Oh, Ava, why? All right, we can move on. Next, I want to talk about one that's probably slightly less popular, but we've talked about it here before. Sparks, Nevada, Marshall on Mars. I listened to 4 whole episodes of this in preparation for this mission. I found it to be good. Sparks, Nevada is a podcast as part of the Thrilling Adventure Hour. It is interestingly done kind of in the way you might think of a dime novel or a pulp magazine being turned into a radio show. Interestingly enough, it's got a very charm to it. What's interesting about a Western podcast is that Westerns were one of the most popular genres in Hollywood when we got sound as a part of film. And so with Westerns, you really got to hear the American nature of it. You got to hear the accents. You got to hear the wind on the prairie. You got to hear the horses whinnying and the guns firing. And Sparks, Nevada really uses a lot of these elements to its advantage to really give you that Western feel. Again, they are out in the middle of nowhere on Mars. The main character is very much a trope of the cowboy lawman.
Is he from Earth?
Earth.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yes. He has a lot of encounters with strangers that show up where he's in charge and he's got to take control of things. And his I don't know Sparks, Nevada well enough to say what he is. His sidekick, I guess, who's the tracker, who's the Martian, who is a clear like Native American metaphor, I guess. Who is my favorite character, but that's because I love Spock so much. And he's the Spock, guys. What's his name? Anybody? The Martian?
Approach the tracker.
Yes.
Although that is the closest I can get with my limited human sound production system.
Yes, he's designated Martian.
His designation is Approach the Tracker.
Yes.
Native Martian?
Native resident of Pakistan, which he designate Mars.
It's very cute. It's very well acted. It's well produced, and I know most of you probably haven't heard any of it, but I plan on listening to more of it, and I would recommend you guys give it a try. Do you guys have any questions about this? I just thought it was an interesting example because of kind of that history of sound in film. Okay. We can keep going. So let's talk about some of the influences of Westerns in very, very popular sci-fi. So Star Wars, very, very clearly good and evil represented, at least in the original trilogy. It's very simple. The light side of the Force is going to fight the dark side of the Force. Also, the idea of what a hero is. The setting, a lot of the times they're on these border planets. The way that the sets are made, everything is, again, kind of well-worn, the way that you would think a Pioneer would have it. They're dusty or broken down. You see warfare. The dynamic between a pilot and his astromech droid is the way you might consider a cowboy and his horse to be. Weirdly, despite the fact that droids are people.
Droids are people too.
Droids are people too. You have these settings. Just look at Mos Eisley. Just look at it. That's from a Western. You can't tell me it's not. And of course, the cantina is a saloon. Other things that are just really, really obvious. Look at Han Solo. He's a cowboy. He is a scruffy nerf herder. The specific word to think about there is herder. Not to mention, he's famous for a gunfight. And he also is, he's there with Leia, who kind of acts like a damsel, especially in episode 5, but she's better than that. But she that's the role she plays in that particular film. And Boba Fett is a great outlaw. You don't need to know anything about him. He's just mysterious and cool and vaguely evil. And that's all you need. What other elements of Star Wars? There's a billion of them. Yep.
I don't know if we talked about it when we talked about tropes of the genre,
Mhm.
but there's a lot of frontier being good and organized government in the city being bad.
Yep.
In Star Wars, you've got the Empire and the big cool worlds,
Mhm.
and they're associated directly with evil.
Mhm.
And our heroes are a smuggler who doesn't really like the law and a farm boy.
Mhm. I'm trying to think of what else about that.
Wow, that is very apparent in Firefly. That is very.
That's what Firefly is about for sure. That also carries through with Star Trek to an extent, which we can talk about in a minute. But anything else about Star Wars that's particularly Western to you guys? Yeah.
At least in the show's law in like the fifth movie in Empire Strikes Back, Lando Calrissian is the smooth Calrissian is a smooth gambler,
Mhm.
and they talk about how Han Solo got the Millennium Falcon from him in a game of cards,
Mhm.
and that's a very kind of like Western thing, like betting a lot on your game of poker and walking away with like stuff like that. It's like kind of gambling idea.
Especially, I'm sure there's a lot of westerns where the cowboy wins a horse like that. And I mean, what is a ship but a horse? John.
He also has a faithful sidekick from an enslaved and not well thought of race.
For sure. Yep.
This is like more akin to like the sci-fi western sort of thing, where his ship looks like a piece of shit, but he makes it do like really impressive things, even though that it still looks and everyone else claims it is a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm. When you're a pioneer and you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're not getting a new ship anytime soon. You're not getting new parts anytime soon. You're going to work with what you have until it's absolutely dead, and you're going to fix it yourself, no matter what that takes. And usually people are able to do pretty good with that when push comes to shove. Chris.
Yeah, so what I love about like the original trilogy is that it was made basically in the midst of the Cold War. So like there's a very big heavy emphasis on liberty versus authoritarianism. And I think what Han Solo represents is kind of like a throwback from an older period in American film, a more older period in American history, where it was just like, it was all about like virtues and ideals, and like having rugged individualism, and kind of like bringing his perspective and his like support to the freedom fighters, the communists or the empire.
Not necessarily from Star Wars, but I read, doing research for this mission, a really interesting paper about Firefly and about Malcolm Reynolds as a leader and as an individual, and then about all of his crew as kind of the cogs in the machine of their team, and where the morals of the leader influence the morals of the team, but not necessarily the morals of the individual. It was a really interesting paper, actually, and if any of you are interested in it, I will send it to you. It's called Firefly and a New Mythos of the Old West. It's pretty good, so if you're interested, let me know. Yep.
I don't think Leia fit into any much women roles.
Do they have soul guys?
A damsel role for part of Empire Strikes Back. I don't think as a whole or as an individual she does. I agree with you, but she's in some of those situations. What?
She doesn't go also.
What?
You have also.
Yes.
So like two knows the original trilogy.
Yeah, she's a little bit damsel-y. She's really badass. So but.
Bullshit. We know that's bullshit. We actually know it's bullshit.
Do we have another comment back there? Yeah.
A lot of Westerns have a counter Southern Comparison city folk with that's teamed up with the Western Fine guys. You see that in senior review as being more city folk.
Mhm.
It used to be diplomacy and everything going politely. And he's with R2 more rough around the edges, Western Fine with this jargon, completely ignore what the is doing.
No, he doesn't have that just
And often he doesn't fit in very well, does he? So that kind of speaks to the sensibilities of the Western as well, that he's out of place. Anything else from Star Wars? There's just a ton of it.
If we want to, the Death Star is a giant gunfighter who can draw their gun faster.
Yeah.
The actual pilot or the guy firing the Death Star later.
And like in High Noon, which I mentioned earlier, it's kind of a countdown until the outlaw who's there to fight the sheriff shows up on a train at noon. So that I think is something that's common in a lot of storytelling and a lot of films, is the ticking clock kind of gives a sense of urgency and action. Yeah.
I think that Death Star is more akin to, like, I haven't seen a lot of Westerns, but in the Magnificent Seven, when the bad guy just like unveils like the Gatling gun and just like turns the tide with the super weapon. I think it's more like, hey, like, come on, man, that's cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Wait. So it's like the giant spider in.
Is it Wild Wild West?
Yes, the giant spider.
No.
Alrighty.
It happens.
Let's get where I'm more familiar and talk about some Star Trek. So Star Trek is has a lot of Western elements, though they may not be as easy to see from first look as Star Wars, simply because of the way that they portray that setting. Again, the being out on the frontier, the final frontier, if you will. This one in the corner was a GIF. There's supposed to be an Enterprise there. It's not working. I'm sorry, guys. Frontier, you can kind of see if Kirk is the cowboy, he's the lawman. He wants to do things the right way, but he very often takes things into his own hands with his own moral code, which sometimes works out way better than just doing things by the book would have, and sometimes gets them into a lot of shit. And Dr. McCoy is the old country doctor. There's no metaphor there. you could just move him and right into a Western and he'd be just fine. Except for he'd complain, but he complains anyway. And then Spock, in this case, would probably be the Native American metaphor. He's got skills that nobody else has, but he's a little bit out of place culturally. But there's no reason to talk about TOS when you could be talking about Deep Space Nine, because Deep Space Nine is the outpost town. Deep Space Nine is the one with the saloon. Deep Space Nine is the one where the trading happens, where there's cultural strife, where warfare comes in and out, and Cisco, I think, makes a pretty good sheriff. Deep Space Nine is really the best example of a Western in Star Trek, in my opinion. Also, who needs prostitutes when you have holodecks? Quark's got that on lockdown. But throughout Star Trek, you see a lot of that solitude, a lot of that small community. You don't see as much of the broken down, gritty pioneer stuff, perhaps because it's more of a military operation. So things are kept a little bit more spick and span, but you do see them have to come up with answers for when they're out in the middle of nowhere and something breaks down. You have to see them do that all the time. And I also think that something that we might see in later Westerns about people overcoming their biases, we see in Star Trek VI Undiscovered Country, when Kirk kind of works through a lot of his biases about the Klingons. they're used to having this image of the Klingons as a warlike and savage species, which the Klingons are a little bit, to be fair, but it's not a clear image that the Federation has of them. And they're starting to forge peace, and Kirk needs to get with the times, which I think is an interesting subplot for Western. Yeah?
I was just mentioned that in TOS, they had at least 3 different episodes where they either went back to a Western style setting or met Indians.
Mhm.
And then in the Next Generation, they had an episode specifically centered around actual Earth Indians. And then a second one set on the holodeck in the Old West.
Yeah.
Like its Old West episodes.
Star Trek likes its past, and why not go to the American West, or a planet that looks just like the American West.
Except it was now versus Cold War.
Star Trek's interesting that way. They're not the only ones that go back in time to the Old West.
Keep dancing around that, aren't we?
Well, we'll get there. We might get there next, actually. Any other Western influences in Star Trek you guys want to talk about? Do we ever get Data in a cowboy hat? Because if we don't, that's a crime. Really?
Yeah. Yes. No, there's a cowboy mustache.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna go home and watch that. Yeah.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is Western. I saw him in a cowboy hat once.
That's how you know. That's how you know it's a Western. Yes. Thank you, Zachary. Zachary, can you post that in Slack?
Yep.
By the way, everybody, if you want to talk about things while I'm talking and you don't want to be disruptive, you can go to Slack and go in general and just chat about whatever. Or go in random and post a lot of memes. That's where you post your memes. Could meme it right up. It could be high noon forever.
It's always high noon somewhere.
That's just not true. That's just not true, no.
That's what McCree says, so it has to be true.
Okay, here we go. Let's chat. Let's chat. All right. So we intermingle these two genres all the time in all different kinds of ways. Very straight up, like just Westerns with sci-fi elements in them. Wild West, and I assume Cowboys and Aliens. I have not seen either of those films. Does anybody?
Don't see Cowboys and Aliens.
Don't see it.
So bad.
I have a very strong opinion about Cowboys and Aliens. That movie is beautiful. It has its flaws objectively, but as a whole, it gave me a lot of joy. It was amazing and watch it.
That movie is a flaw objectively.
Thank you for your feedback. I don't know one way or the other.
Cowboys and Aliens?
Cowboys and Aliens, watch Cowboys and Aliens.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that parody is.
All right. If we have time after we're done talking about Westworld, maybe we'll have a YouTube party. Yeah? Oh. Yeah?
As far as Cowboys and Aliens go, it's like a movie. It's just like all over the place.
Mhm.
Talk about like another like sort of like property that's very Western inspired and everything.
Mhm.
Fallout. The original first two games in New Vegas is a very Western inspired sort of thing, taking place in like in California, Nevada, and everything. And it's very big in like they have like they really double down on the Western theme, especially with like the Rangers.
Mhm.
And so like it's this kind of interesting take of like kind of taking all these values, redoing them, and then placing them in like this sort of postmodern world and seeing how they kind of like react to everything going on. It's hard to explain, but it's kind of interesting.
There's also this, it also carries along the themes of the environment being dangerous, and those themes of kind of being in an area of solitude where there's not a lot going around. Everything is very far apart. I know that there's a lot of that in Fallout as well. Any other Fallout comments? Brett?
I mean, like a lot of the weapons in New Vegas are very Western inspired, which is really cool. Like they even have a 6-shooter that you kind of load one at a time, just like in the real. And it's just, as you go through the desert, it feels very much like you're kind of like a cowboy roaming until you find like a town or something to fill up at.
Or does Patrol know how to race it? Maybe race for the winter.
But like, actually, just to kind of like add on that, you have that revenge story that kind of drives it. Like,
Mhm.
you kind of come into the world, and it's like you have all these factions fighting each other in New Vegas specifically, but story personally to your characters in the very beginning of the game, someone basically shoots you in the head, leaves you to die, you somehow survive, and you're basically just going through like town to town looking for them. And your sole goal is to find and get your revenge.
Is there a side quest where he's like literally showed down an
Oh, that's in I think that's in, I know there's one in 4 that's literally showing up.
That's in Borderlands.
Yeah, Brian?
Is Cowboy Bebop. It definitely the character of Spike is very cowboyish, but a lot of the themes surrounding it are very much more related to science fiction than cowboy things. Because there's episodes that talk about genetically enhanced viruses, a super smart Corgi, and just
The best character, you mean?
and like a lot of hyperdrive confusion stuff.
It's been a very long time since I've seen Cowboy Bebop, and a very long time since I've seen the first 10 episodes of Trigun. But I know that besides just having kind of a cross-genre between sci-fi and westerns that they really share with the western genre, is they've got this main character that's got questionable morality. He may be an anti-hero. He's got a kind of dark past. And I know that that's something that those two share that's definitely a theme in westerns. Yeah.
I think, at least we're talking about Bebop, the thing that makes it Western is more its style of storytelling than anything in particular about the characters or the environment. Every episode acts as a standalone story with a Western type introduction of the outsider being whichever the focused character is, entering the scene, meeting the characters, and accomplishing the goal, which is usually a Western type theme. Hunting the bounty, solving the problem, saving the damsel. All of those themes and tropes from the genre kind of crop up in the show in the way that they structure the episodes, even though the themes are more modern.
Thank you for that feedback. Again, it's been a really long time for me and Cowboy Bebop. I should watch it again. I know that it's excellent. I just need to find time. You had your hand up over there, I think. No? Oh, okay. We've got the ones where they go back in time to the Old West or to the contemporary West. There's an entire Back to the Future movie about it. I was listening to a review of it before I came here, and it seems like it certainly is a time. There is a time traveling train in it, right? I wasn't dreaming that. So something that struck me as interesting about that train that somehow I didn't think about at all before when I was putting this together was the opportunity in this cross-genre sphere for steampunk, because that's kind of the same time period in terms of science. So if you are going to go back to that time, but you're going to insert some sci-fi technology, steampunk would be the way to go, I would think. Giant mechanical spider.
Because like you have like this is the time where like steam really take over.
Yeah.
You do kind of have that sort of steampunk beat, but after you have like early westerns like the 40s gold rush, you have the trains coming in, these big hulking machines that are like they're changing the landscape of America. You could definitely play around with that and get a little bit more sci-fi. Maybe have like a plane or something, but you definitely have these changing times where like the Industrial Revolution's in full swing. It's just going hard.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know why it took Back to the Future for me to think of that. Yeah.
I think steampunk though is it's Victorian centered.
Yeah.
Not necessarily American centered. So a lot of times you get like think of steampunk like you get like Europe and down a little bit of New England. They don't really like push steampunk out into the West.
Because if you do, you get giant mechanical spider.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get the exceptions. Blah blah blah.
Makes sense. It's just the technological opportunity for it, I guess. Though, if we want to talk about kind of contrasting a European or a British feel with an American feel, put the 11th Doctor in a Stetson, just because it's funny. Just funny to see the Doctor in a Stetson. And the reason I have them in this scene from The Impossible Astronaut on here, instead of the scene where he's actually got the Stetson on, is because I've been in that diner. It is an American-themed diner that sells horrible American food. It is in Cardiff, Wales, and I sat at the 11th table, and it was okay. It's right around the corner from the Doctor Who Experience. We walked in, there was nobody in there, and the owner saw our Doctor Who Experience bags, and he was like, "Oh, you're gonna want to sit at table 11, aren't you?" So that was fun. They've got photos up of Matt Smith, so that's a cute place. It does have a giant Marilyn Monroe. It also does have Elvis on the back wall. All those are painted there. Those are not part of a set. That's what that diner looks like. And it is in Wales. It is in Mermaid Key. Right around the corner from where Torchwood is. That's where it is.
Was bad?
It's okay.
This is not actually
It was weirdly not like American food I was used to. It was good though.
This is about as much like American food as American Chinese food is like Chinese food.
I would assume so. Yeah, it was good. I had a burger, like fried mushrooms. Yeah. So that's my story about that episode of Doctor Who. Yeah, but the Doctor goes back to the West and the current West, but with a Western feel a handful of times. Also, sometimes there's cowboys and dinosaurs in Doctor Who, so yeah. Good time. Are you raising your hand?
Back to the West with the robot cyborg guy hunting down the other dude. Episode whose plot I can barely remember, but I know it was set in the Wild West.
It wasn't built in America though. He's talking about talking to a town called Murphy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They totally filmed in the U.S. That was just not the diner. Just in the U.S. They totally went to like Arizona or something and filmed a lot of
They
those.
filmed Impossible Astronaut in Utah.
In Utah.
But they filmed a town called Mercy in Spain, I believe.
In Spain?
Yeah, I think within Spain, there's like some town that is like a set used for all sorts of things set in the Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they just filmed there. Apparently, a lot of things they filmed there. They filmed in the Wild West. Cheaper than flying to America.
Yeah. Lots of things are cheaper than flying to America, especially the whole film crew. And I know a lot of you here are Overwatch fans. I asked for some things to say about McCree. The comments I got from a close friend of mine were, one, need me a man like that, followed by, he's a literal angel who has done nothing wrong ever in his entire life. I've not played Overwatch, so feel free to feed back on that. But they also told me a lot of things that kind of reinforced that he was like this charming rogue kind of cowboy character, that he was clever but had vices, that he had a compromising past that really influences him. I don't want to say too much more because I'm not sure what is spoilers for Overwatch because I don't play Overwatch. But
There's nothing. The story has nothing to do with the gameplay, so it's all separate.
Okay, sounds good. Does anybody have anything to say about McCree?
His entire life is Western.
Took America, rolled it up into a ball, and gave it a cowboy hat, and ended up with
Yes.
So, whole backstory for McCree, if anyone doesn't already know.
Everybody, let's listen to Claire.
Is that basically he was taken in by the Deadlock gang, and then they were like basically outlaws who terrorized towns nearby Canyon. They was like, this is our territory. But eventually, Overwatch came in, kicked him out, and saw McCree was like dirty little, just like a kid. Apparently, he was recruited around 19. So he was just a little baby, and they saw him, like, what the fuck?
Excuse you.
Like I said, just a baby.
I remember when I was.
Are you that cool right now, John? Are you that cool right now? Are you as cool as McCree was when McCree was 19 right now?
I ain't good. I ain't bad. But I sure as hell ain't a.
But are you a cowboy?
Yeah.
He's a good man. Well, he's all right.
Yeah, and then for some reason, when he was in Blackwatch, he was wearing like a regular uniform, not the whole weird getup everyone knows him by.
With the hat?
Yeah, he did. I don't know. I don't remember whether he had the hat.
There are no pictures of McCree in Blackwatch, so we really can't say for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
I also have been advised that he's a BAM.
That's what his note
Yeah.
says.
When's the last time you were lied to by a belt buckle?
That was given to him ironically. That was given to him ironically, and he took it seriously.
I would too. Don't tell me you wouldn't. I know most people in here, if they were given an ironic BAM belt buckle, would wear it. Unironically. So, what other westerns? What other sci-fi westerns? Westerns with sci-fi, sci-fi with westerns. Bring them up. I know there's more than what I've touched on.
Borderlands 2, and I haven't played Borderlands 1, but I assume that one too, but not Borderlands the pre-sequel. Because that one
Yeah, Borderlands 1 is much more Western than Borderlands 2.
How are they westerns?
Well, they're set in like frontiers and deserts. You play as a character whose goal is just to find some treasure. You're not a good or bad character.
Yeah.
You have pick-up revolvers, which are awesome, the best guns.
Yeah, no, there's a gun manufacturing that makes like revolvers and like bolt-action sniper rifles, and when you pick up a Jacob's weapon, you quite literally get wood.
What? It has wood on the
You
gun.
get wood.
Okay.
Also, the music is very Western.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the whole world.
I've seen Borderlands played with my eyes. Right?
And at least in Borderlands 1, the main quest is kind of dumbed down. Like, it's not really that important. The important thing is, like, actually what you're doing. So they don't make a big deal out of it. So it's a lot of just running around and shooting things.
It's a lot of looting ones, too.
A lot of
Outlaws. Yeah.
I don't know if this was actually like kind of count, but kind of Farscape.
I need to. It should be on my list, and it's not.
I watched like a couple of episodes of it, but it kind of has a. It's hard to kind of compare one-to-one to a Western. It has similar themes to it. Basically, it starts off completely different. An astronaut obviously gets launched into the far future, gets picked up by a couple of like renegade rebels, and they're on the run from the law. So it's kind of like that classic kind of like posse of outlaws out running the law on the frontier sort of thing. It plays around with it a lot. That's a good plot point, so it's a good show.
Good. It's been recommended to me over and over that I need to watch Farscape.
It was on Netflix for a while ago, but they got rid of it.
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah. There are methods, legal methods where you support the people who hold the license are the best ways. Is it still on Netflix?
Oh, last I checked.
Okay. Joe, do you have a sci-fi western?
So.
Wait. Muppets?
No.
Oh, okay, go on.
Toy Story.
Okay. No. Totally. Toy Story is kind of a sci-fi western in the same way that Overwatch is, in that there's a good mix of characters with representation from both genres. But Woody does really personify the Western cowboy, like even in just his own storyline. Also, there's a snake in his boot. Zachary.
I was just gonna say, Farscape's still on that, but.
Sad. Yes.
While we're on the topic of Pixar movies, I think we need to bring up the best Pixar movie ever created, which was also a Western.
Am I gonna be sad?
The Good Dinosaur.
The Good Dinosaur.
The Good Dinosaur. That is Western. That is Western.
I do not know this movie.
The brontosaurus are ranchers.
Yeah, the ranchers. Very clearly the West, like those two American West. And come by at the end of the month to find out why everything's going to be sci-fi.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the wonderful world of Disney and sci-fi, and by we I mean Joe. So that's coming up later this semester.
And then you'll find out why the Good Dinosaur is sci-fi.
Have any sci-fi westerns they want to talk about? Okay, then it's time, everyone. I'm gonna give the spoiler warning now for Westworld, for those of you who want to remain unspoiled. Again, I'm going to personally only be spoiling the first episode, but other people may have things to bring up that are spoilery otherwise. Also, you may just want to remain unspoiled for the first episode. It's that kind of show where learning the premise the way that they show it to you first off is an experience in itself. So if you want to preserve that experience, you may want to keep going. I'll let Noah travel. I'll let
No, you
everybody
can talk. It's just I have a lot of work to do, and I don't really care about Westworld.
Oh,
I don't care about
okay,
spoilers,
that's fine.
so go ahead.
So we're ready for me to put pictures on the screen? Okay. All right, so Westworld. Westworld is a really badass show, is the first thing I have to say about it. It has been called the new Game of Thrones, because Game of Thrones is ending soon, and may I just say I'm really happy that the new Game of Thrones is sci-fi, because I like sci-fi. I honestly agree with that statement in that Game of Thrones leaves a lot of room open for interpretation, for kind of analyzing the plot, coming up with like theory crafting, and Westworld is very much the same way. It is a theory crafting show. It is based on a novel by Michael Crichton, and then that novel was made into a movie that I hear is terrible and have never seen. If you have seen it, feel free to let us know how it was. Anybody? Has anybody seen it?
Yeah, I haven't seen the original movie, but it was Crichton that wrote the movie. It wasn't.
Oh, it wasn't about.
He wrote the.
Was it a short story first?
Not that I know.
No.
I think he made it for the movie.
He made it.
Huh. Okay. Well, I stand corrected. So the premise of Westworld is that in the undefined future, there is a theme park in which the very rich can go and pretend to be in the Old West. And Westworld is created to be full of characters from the Old West, full of settings from the Old West. It's full of almost video game-like quests you can go on. It's very interesting, and what's even more interesting about it is that you, as a guest, as a person who goes into this world, can do whatever you want to any of the townsfolk there because they are androids. That means you can kill them, you can torture them, you can sleep with them, you can do anything you like, which is really interesting premise and a really interesting way to take a look at human nature. It follows a lot of interesting characters. It follows a very interesting storyline about the development of the park, about the people who make the park, about the people who enter the park. It just learning about how the whole setting is constructed is magnificent, and kind of going on a journey of discovery with all the characters. The discovery itself, whether they are human or not, is fascinating. It overall, as you can imagine, with a show that heavily favors androids, it very much considers what it means to be human, which is a sci-fi, a very well-worn sci-fi idea, but it does it so well. It makes a lot of literary references, just beautiful ones. It takes the fear of the unknown. It takes the good and evil aspect. It questions how mankind can shape our world with technology and what is ethical about it. It's just really beautifully crafted. It's very complex as it goes on throughout the season. I mean, I won't spoil what they do or how they do it, but the whole storyline is it's very complex. The characters are all very complex. Westworld is really good, guys. And a lot like Cowboy Bebop was described, it really is more of a Western within a sci-fi than a Western itself, though it has so much of the setting, so many of the tropes. It's just really good. Anybody have anything to say about Westworld that they want to say? If you're going to spoil beyond episode 1, please warn for it first. Okay. Yeah?
I just kind of like the concept of a synthetic kind of amusement park, because the West has always been something that fascinates kids and adults alike. That could be seen at what's the name of where's Thunder Mountain in Disneyland?
Frontierland?
Frontierland. That's kind of a big part of Disney World. It's one of the main attractions of the whole park. So it's understandable that when people grow up, people still want to play like cowboys and movies. They still love Frontierland and stuff like that. So having a big amusement park built around it is an interesting concept, but it's also it's not a unique idea of having a simulated sort of civilization, but it's a unique application of the idea. People always do you live in a simulation, do we do that?
Yeah.
Nobody ever asks, do you live in a simulation to be an amusement park for someone else? That's never really a big question.
Another thing is a lot of the times in sci-fi when we see simulations, they're digital, they're holodecks, they're such good virtual reality that you can't tell one way or the other. That's not what Westworld is like. Westworld is a literal place where you go and then you're there and everything around you has been constructed. So it is totally a simulation. Everything that you experience the way that you would experience it anyway, whether you're killing somebody or sleeping with somebody, or you're still in real life. You're not in virtual reality, but it is still a simulation. And yeah, as an amusement tool, it's just a cool concept. Yeah.
Can you go back to the very first slide?
Yes. Do what he
Yes.
says. And just think about it.
Okay.
If you've seen Westworld.
Okay.
Back to the what is a Western?
Oh.
The future?
This one?
No, go forward. One more.
This one.
That one.
Every single line of that is used in Westworld and twisted.
And in a really cool way, too.
I can't give you the specifics without spoiling.
If you've seen Westworld, you should know what we
Every
mean.
character in that list exists, but it's also a subverted trope. Every element is used, and a lot of them are used in ways you don't expect. And all of those themes are definitely present, and they use them in ways that kind of defy what you would traditionally expect in Western. Or very reminiscent of exactly the ones you do with sci-fi.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of these elements, the way they exist in Westworld, are just fantastic. They're just awesome. Is there anybody here who doesn't want to talk about the whole series? Who hasn't seen the whole series? Who wants to remain unspoiled for it? Okay, that's fine. Then we don't need to talk about this in depth, at least not until the very end, maybe. But oh yeah, Westworld is all about subverting the genre that it chooses. I don't know how much I can say that it subverts the sci-fi genre. The sci-fi aspects of Westworld are actually somewhat straightforward. I mean, if you've seen, iRobot or anything else having to do with androids, stories about androids have a lot of shared elements and shared thoughts about humanity, consciousness, and all of those kinds of things. And Westworld jumps right into those. Westworld attends those right up front, and it's so good the way that it does it. But it doesn't do it weirdly, I don't think. But when you take the Western world that is constructed within Westworld, oh yeah, and not just like the theme park subverts it, the show subverts it. It's so good. So some of these, the way that they're in Westworld, are just mind-blowingly good. Some of these that are the way they are in Westworld are just mind-blowingly good. Yeah, Starlo?
No, me and Justin were both like, oh my god, we're on this slide.
Yeah.
So, with the sci-fi thing though, I don't want to get too into it, but it does do some things that I'm not gonna say, I didn't fully expect them to do some things that they do. I'm not gonna go too into
Some
it.
of the things they do, I didn't expect them to do in the first season.
Yeah.
I expected
I
them to
agree
take
with that.
longer. I'm glad that they didn't.
But it also does all the things it does that are sci-fi, like stupid well.
Stupid
Like,
well. Also, it's gorgeous.
Everyone's cast amazingly.
Yes.
Everyone.
Yes. Also, they're just interesting actors in the cast. The guy who plays Hendo Choi in Pacific Rim is in it. I don't remember which character he plays, but he's in a bunch of the later episodes. Yeah, he's one of the hosts. Yeah. Yeah, he's that guy.
Part of me almost likes Anthony Hopkins' character in this moment as Hannibal a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a part of me that definitely likes.
Oh, he's so well casted, Anthony Hopkins. Oh,
He's
so well
so
casted.
He absolutely kills the role.
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, if you're talking about not necessarily genre, but that actor has some expectations that go along with him, and the way that Westworld works those expectations are so good too.
The only thing I really know him as is Hannibal Lecter. So I was going through, I was like, oh, okay. And then, not gonna go too into it, but,
So good. Another one of the castings that I really like is Billy. You may know him from the small role he plays in House of Cards. You may also know him as one of the incestuous hillbillies from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which just blows my mind. How did he jump from that role to this one? I have no idea. I'm sure House of Cards helped, but
House of Cards helped, I think.
oh, he's so good too. He's so good.
There's also in a one-off episode of House.
Yes, he is in a one-off episode. That was.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So you kind of go back to like, actually discussing the show and not just all of us saying it's really good.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I think it's really interesting to look at that list of themes there and to see not only how the actual human characters go through them, but how the hosts go through them, especially when a host is scripted to act a certain way and fill a certain role, and the way that they address their role without realizing that that's what they're programmed to do,
Yeah.
and how they change over time is really, really interesting. And then issues of defining sentience and what exactly makes a host versus a human. It's a really cool way that Westworld addresses those themes, because they portray most of the hosts as being more human than many people.
Yeah, especially because the humans that are within the show are two kinds of people. They either are part of constructing Westworld, they work at Westworld, they administrate Westworld, or they are guests at Westworld. There may be some exceptions, but for the most part, those are the humans in the show. And if you are making a reality that's there for people to go and almost always just be violent and, kill things and shoot things, blow things up and, commit sexual assault, like, if you're creating that world for that purpose, you're a certain kind of person. And if you are somebody who's going to that world, not every guest we see is like that, but if that's your idea of a good time, you're also a certain kind of person. And it's very interesting contrasting those people, like Justin said, with the hosts, the people within Westworld who are written. They're written people. And they're meant to be characters in a story, no matter how lifelike they are. So they're more human in the way that characters are more human, I guess, in some ways. But there's more than that in it too. Yeah. Yep.
I always thought it was interesting that throughout the show, they give the androids like specific human features, like whenever most of the time when they did flashbacks, it was from the point of view of the host, which is something that was normally be very difficult to portray from a robot point of view.
Mm-hmm. And not what you would expect either. You would expect as a viewer to be in the human's heads, not inside the robots. I think you probably spent an equal amount of time with the two different kinds of characters, but the duality there is really interesting.
They split up like POVs, I guess, very well.
Yeah. Yeah. To not spoil too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, the only show that probably had is so similar, like Game of Thrones, where it just jumps around.
Yeah.
I mean, but
It very much jumps around. I wouldn't say that there's
I
any.
get frustrated when they don't show me the things for a few episodes and I go away off.
I mean, there are characters that are definitely more main characters than anyone else.
I'm sure.
I mean,
Like, I'll watch it again.
you know, you're gonna see Dolores in every episode. You know, she's gonna be there.
Yeah, she is.
So, I wouldn't want to say that she's the main character, but
There's one main character.
I was about to say there's a host of them. Oh no. Oh no. Has anybody not seen Westworld who has questions? Who wants to know about the hype or know something other than the hype, I guess? Yeah.
Kind of curious about like sweet thing that happens in the show, and the most shocking.
There are many, many shocking things. That's all I'll say.
I usually have an easy time telling.
I also cannot think of a sweet thing off the top of my head. They do. I mean, if you consider that that Westworld itself is an amalgamation of different stories that are written narratives, a lot of those stories have sweet moments. But overall, the story of the characters that you get as a viewer seeing the sci-fi show, most of the sweet moments are not a part of that storyline. They're part of the individual storylines within Westworld. Yeah.
Something really cool, but it's not a spoiler. They do a lot of, I guess, covers of famous songs.
Yes, they do. Yeah. Yes, they do.
House of the Rising Sun, mm-hmm. Black, I know there's more.
Yeah.
And they're all like Westy-ish, like if you're on
almost every episode they do that. They do some kind of cover of a pop song or a rock song. Oh, and they make just great montages. The other thing that's amazing about it is
it's in there somewhere. I remember hearing that one in Victor being in Black. I actually missed the first time around when I had to go back and watch.
The other great thing about this show that blows my mind is the sheer amount of practical effects. This thing, this big ass 3D printer with the most of a guy on it that is making the human, that is the, like when you look at the picture of the show with the big Westworld logo and the guy like this is a real thing that they built. They built this. And they move, the way that the machinery that you see constructing Westworld moves in the show is so cool. It is on the level, in terms of practical effects, it is on the level of Pacific Rim, it is on the level of Mad Max. It is awesome. It's so good. And the same with all of the stuff in Westworld is a lot of practical effects. It's so good. Yeah.
Did they get real robotic arms and program them to do all the things that they did?
I don't know.
That would be really awesome.
It looks like some of like robotic arms that you show like car manufacturing.
I think
that's the same.
Yeah.
Actually got engineers to make them do the things that they do.
I would not be surprised.
That would be amazing.
I know that these are not, these arms definitely exist somewhere on a film set. I don't know if they are programmed to do the thing they do. I don't know. I do not know. I would not be surprised if they were not prop arms. Yeah.
This is kind of just like an off-topic question, but Pacific Rim had a practical, like a good amount of practical effects. So yeah, I know they kind of had like these,
a ton.
like the head.
Yeah.
Like I was just like, the way I remember, I just want to go off CPI. I really like practical.
So the way that they want to make their
Yeah.
there isn't very much CG.
It's like the
Like,
I'm sorry, I'm thinking the robots are CG because that's why you have rubber Godzilla suits.
Yeah. Yeah. But like for instance, like the streets of Hong Kong are they built those inside a soundstage. The entire city of Hong Kong, as shown in that movie, is built inside a soundstage.
And that's like one of my favorite like sets of all time, though, because like they do like they talk about how like living in a world like actually having a world that's kind of lived in this kind of thing. Because you have like the old kaiju skeleton being built around, because they could never move the body, so you have like the bridge making like all the buildings and stuff. I think that's a cool little thing.
And the look of it is very Blade Runner too. Yeah. Yeah, no, practical effects for the win. Love them. Yeah, the whole inside of the Jaegers, every cockpit you see is practical effects. The actors actually had to march like this.
That one I knew. I just didn't know about like the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can't. The kaiju are kaiju. I mean, they're, you know.
It's not quite as good as Interstellar's practical effects.
Yeah, Interstellar is another one with great practical effects that spin like this one does.
Interstellar had almost no CG. Like every spaceship you see, almost every single shot is a model.
I was like,
Even the explosions, they actually blew up a small model.
a lot of the explosions in Pacific Rim are practical effects.
Travel to a black hole, actually?
No, the black hole was CG.
What?
They did their best with the science they had. Does anybody have anything else they want to say about Westworld and how magnificent it is and how much they want season 2 and how I really hope that I'm not overhyping it for you guys who haven't seen it?
I'm a little worried about season 2, because I don't know how they can do just as well, but
I
I
can't wait.
also understand.
They're totally gonna though. They totally are. It's HBO.
They're taking their time to develop them.
Yeah, they're gonna take like 2 years to come out.
Me and him were talking about this. The writer said that season 1 was actually as a prologue.
Oh, and
they
it's
planned
written like a prologue.
everything else first.
Yeah.
Or they planned it all at the same time. So.
Well, yeah.
That's obvious, but I don't know, because
I like it that way.
season
Though.
1 to me just is such a complete story. I think you'd say that.
Well, we'd be like,
They did get other stuff.
it's like in Game of Thrones at the end of season 1, all the stuff that happens at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
Characters
No,
who die
I'll
and
definitely
dragons that
watch
show up
season
and
2, I'm
stuff
just
like
saying.
that is, it all sets the stage for what the show is.
Aquaman makes a grand exit so you can carry the movie.
Oh, King of the Dudes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, Westworld ends kind of ambiguously.
Very
Which it's meant to, because they planned the season 2 and wrote most of, at least the outline of season 2 before they even started making season 1. In that sense, I'm totally excited for season 2 and not worried about it. I think a better example of something that would make me worried is, say, Stranger Things, which ended ambiguously, deliberately, as kind of an ending of the story that makes you wonder what's going to happen. And I'm not convinced that season 2 is going to come around and give a complete story. But Westworld feels very much like you wrote 2 or 3 books, and this is book 1.
Very much so. It's not sci-fi, but the way you describe Stranger Things is also very much how I'm feeling about Sherlock right now. Like, if they decide to make more, what?
I haven't seen season 4 or the Christmas special because season 3 just.
I don't, you know,
Season 3 was great.
it's worth watching, I think, if you're a Sherlock fan. It's better.
Eventually.
It's not, I'll watch it eventually is exactly the way that I would suggest you think of it.
In the slightest.
Huh?
The Christmas special, I'm not interested in, like, really.
It's good. It's
Okay.
good. It's not amazing.
Because
It's
I know
good.
you and I actually had similar views on the Christmas special when they announced it. Okay.
So we're kind of wrapping up now. Does anybody else have anything at all they want to say about
I think Joe wants to
Westerns?
come back if we don't.
Are we allowed to?
He's like a vampire dude by
Are the people waiting? They're overlooking Joe. Come back if you want. I think we're done with Westworld yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If nobody has anything else,
One episode of Futurama.
one episode of Futurama. Which one?
You heard the bungalow.
Oh my God.
Those are cute.
Anytime those words show up.
So, thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have anything else to say about Westerns, feel free to head over to the Slack and chat it up. If you want to stay and help us clean up, that'd be great. If you want, yeah, Batman and Lego movie.
If you want to see Lego Batman with us, buy your tickets either with cash or with a card.
Ow, ow!